this is the first time someone's held a gun to my head. You're gonna make me late, and I hate being late.
Took you so long.
There's a couple of babies I had to put to sleep.
Welcome to Toronto. Congratulations on the film.
Thank you, sir.
You're stepping into some pretty big shoes filled previously by Mr. Statham. I'm just wondering if you could talk about your relationship with the Transporter films beforehand and what brought you to the project.
I hadn't seen the films previous to getting the audition. You know, I was in Serbia shooting a movie. I had an overgrown ginger beard. I dyed completely ginger. It went right over my top lip. I dyed my eyebrows ginger. I'd shaved my head and shaved lumps out of my head. And I got the audition to go and try for the Transporter, and I thought, hang on a minute, you know, someone does that already, you know. And so anyway, I looked into it. I watched the 3 movies, you know, tried to understand, you know, what people would expect from them and what had gone previously, and whether it was something I felt that I could, you know, would feel natural or something that I felt I could learn from. And, you know, it was unlike anything I'd done before up until that point. You know, it felt like something, he felt like a character I could step into, and it felt like something, as I say, I could learn from. Because, you know, at that point I had no experience in martial arts. I'd never led a movie, been #1 on the call sheet. Never worked in France before, and you know, obviously the prospect of working with Luc Besson is something that anyone who's at the stage that I am, the baby stage in their career like me, you know, would you know, could learn a lot from. So I went along to the first audition. They said to me, could you wear a white shirt? So I put a white shirt on top of my jeans and my Nike Air Max 90s, Illuminous green at the time, I think. But you know, they only shoot from the top up. So I did the audition, felt good, walked out, and there were 5 dudes dressed up as Frank Martin in the waiting room, and I was like, oh man, you know, I felt like I'd really missed the trick. But they called me back and they said, yeah, you know, I went back to Serbia to finish off the movie, and they said, right, now we want you to, Luc Besson wants you to come to Paris to meet him. And I was like, wow, okay. All right, let's go. You know, I can learn from him in this 2 hours, even if I don't get the job. Went there and had a funny experience there. You know, he really like pulled the rug out from under my legs and made me do like an hour and a half of stunts, and then gave me a scene and said, learn this in 10 minutes and I'll be back. And like, you know, was holding the camera like an inch away from my nose, and you know, it was really a challenging but a wonderful challenge of an audition. Thankfully, I'd shaved my beard off by then. I was still a complete skinhead at the time. And then I went for the 3rd audition, and they said, can you wear a suit this time? And can you make sure you've got the stubble and all of that, you know? And I did that, and so it was a long process, you know. Longest audition that I've got. I have done some auditions where I've done 4 self-tapes, you know, and sent them over and haven't got them. But this was the longest audition that I'd done in person. And but you know, I felt relaxed about them, and it was a fun process, the audition process, you know.
The scope of the film you talk about, you're now basically the face of this film. You are the titular character, essentially. If you could talk about the transition from working on something like Game of Thrones, which is such a big production, and you played a very specific role in it, to working on this, where you literally are the center of attention, the focus of the entire film.
Yeah, I mean, it does make it is a very different role. You know, I've done, you know, in my very short career, I've been, you know, I've gone from like number 18 on the call sheet. I think on Game of Thrones I might have been number 87. You know, they got so many. They're probably a number 350 by now. And so, you know, I was kind of like, you know, moving on down, started to do some, you know, smaller productions where I was number 3, number 4, you know, and gaining more understanding of the craft and how it worked. And you know, if you're a young soccer player, football player, then, you know, you need time on the pitch. you got to play. You got to make mistakes. You got to get sent off. You've got to score a couple of goals. You've got to, you know, play in the cold winter. You've got to play in the hot summer. You've got to have experience, you know. Play with players better than you, worse than you, you know. And that's what I was so aware that I needed. But all of these jobs, they were stop-start. And I was learning small things, but I needed pitch time, game time, which is screen time, you know. And so to go onto this and to be, you know, the initial shooting schedule, I think, was 55 days, and I was in 51 of them. And then in the end, I know they brought me in for at least one extra, and then we did, you know, maybe 10 days of reshoots as well. So this is all over the space of, like, you know, 3-4 months. So it was so intense, but it was so great. And there's certain challenges along the way in this industry that I felt like, you know, this is a test. Let me go for it. Just like with the auditions. Let me just try it. I'll probably fail, but let me just see, you know, can I handle the pressure, inverted commas, of doing something like this? Have I got the stamina to last? Am I even good enough, you know, to do this, you know? And I can certainly answer the first two questions. The third one I'll let you answer after you leave the room or after I leave the room. But no, the first two questions, you know, I tick the box and say, yeah, I feel no pressure whatsoever. And yes, I've got the stamina to do this. If I work hard enough, if I prepare hard enough, if I go into it with a positive mentality, then I can do this, you know. So it was very empowering in that way. Yes, very different, but extremely empowering.
Because you've sort of come up, did you find your interaction with those maybe 3 or 87 on the call sheet was slightly different now that you're in this position?
In what sense, sorry?
In the sense that when you're there, you weren't so long ago number 17 on the call sheet.
Precisely.
You were number 1. Sometimes you would have worked with some people who got to number 1 a little bit even quicker than you did.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering if the interaction just on set, the sort of congenial nature on set, if you see something different about the way that you've come up.
Yeah, I mean, I was never really I always probably in those early stages never felt like I was ready to be number 1 at those points. So there was never a feeling of, that should be me. You know, I wish that was me. Also, there were roles that I didn't necessarily think that I could or should do, you know. But, I you know, you do see people, you know, sort of higher up in the call sheet act like, you know, not so nicely and not so politely, let's say, act like arseholes. And you know, I was fully aware going into it that, you know, I have to be, you know, I want to be respectful. I want to be one of those guys that people say, you know, there wasn't this hierarchy. Yes, I'm in it more and I maybe have more lines or whatever, and the scenes are sort of centered around me, but every single person is as important. And all of these side players, as such, are integral to it. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So, you know, I kind of learnt from those guys that I needed to be, you know, a positive person when I'm in that position.
You started in hip hop, obviously very, very lyric intense, very dialogue intense, for lack of a better word. And here you are at your most physical.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk about not only the challenges of learning the physicality, the choreography of it, which I assume is not dissimilar to learning dance, but also just in terms of acting through performance and what that was like for you.
Interesting notion, very interesting notion. When forming the character, I'm there in Paris 3.5 weeks before the shoot. We're just every day going at it from morning to night. An hour's break for lunch break. We'd go to our little Vietnamese cafe and, you know, have some food and we'd come back and work like dogs, you know, roll around on the floor, beat each other with foam sticks and all types of silly weapons, and discuss the fighting and the intricacies, work on footwork and reaction drills and all of this. But all that time, I'm thinking about the character, and the character's forming in my head. The physicality informs the emotion, and the emotion informs the physicality. Phil Silvera, who's a stunt guy who I worked with on Deadpool, you know, that was his thing all the time. It was like, hold on, why did you just do that? Why did you hit him with that? What, you know, don't forget why you're here. Remember what just happened, you know, and it's all about driving it through emotion. And in the same way, you know, the physicality and the sort of discipline in the training, you know, was already helping me to form this disciplined character of Frank Martin. You know, there's a lot of characters I've played, and even straight afterwards I went to play a fashion photographer who was really ill-disciplined. So I'd go out and party on the weekends, and my posture was terrible. You know, I was chill, you know, flopping into every chair, whereas Frank Martin is the complete opposite. I wanted to be completely disciplined in everything that passed my lips, food-wise, You know, all of that was just completely disciplined. My training was disciplined, my sleep was disciplined, my analysis of the script, my interaction with everyone was disciplined. I was like, definitely on the Transporter, it was the most boring I've been in probably my whole life to be around, you know, and I apologised to my cast members for that, and it's lucky that Ray Stevenson was there to lighten things up and be the life and soul of the party, you know, but it was being informed by that discipline in the pre-production and in the training, you know, and that was another epiphany in terms of learning, you know, and the choreography and the dialogue are two different beasts and two different muscles as such. But some days I would not say one word and I'd have 14 hours of fighting on a cliff or on a jet ski or in a club or whatever. Other days I would just sit down and I would only have dialogue with Ray or someone else like that. And that's okay, you know, they're the sort of straightforward ones. It's when I'd have to, you know, shoot 5 hours of fighting and then slip into a quick dialogue scene, then carry on with the fighting and move on. And, you know, that was a challenge and a wonderful thing to slip out of, you know, but it's muscle memory. As I say, they are all muscles, you know, and it's just like a sort of triathlon or something, you know. We can all swim. A lot of us can swim, a lot of us can ride bikes, a lot of us can run, but when you do them in that order, it takes training. You have to train your body for that. And so it was empowering to do those two things. And I think even when I'm taking on roles that aren't fighting as such, I still make sure that the physicality informs the emotion and vice versa.
You obviously learned to drive a little bit as well on this. I assume you didn't do too many of your driving stunts, but nonetheless you got to go behind the wheel of an Audi.
Yeah.
And if you could talk about how the action on a scale of this film translated when you went to something massive like the scale on Deadpool.
Pretty similar, different ways of working, you know. Something like Transporter, we did everything, you know, like the fight sequences we'd shoot as masters, you know, and you know, the car sequences, we didn't use any CGI. It was just crumpling cars left, right, and center, smashing them up. In Deadpool, you know, there was a fair bit of CGI, you know, and it was a lot more technical in that aspect, you know, and being superhuman, you know, there's different ways of moving and to accentuate that superhuman punch, you don't just want it to be bap bap and move on. It's going to be a boom. It's going to be, you know, so you shoot them differently. You know, the other thing with Deadpool was like, you know, the dialogue sequences in there, a lot of that would feel like independent cinema. It would feel like European cinema. We shot in strip clubs, dive bars, alleyways. You know, it felt like my beginnings of film when just be, you know, one camera in an alleyway pissing with rain, you know, and then you'd go onto the sequences for the choreography and you'd be like, whoa, you know, and you'd do second unit days that had 270 people on, you know, and it's like, it would just blow you away, you know, so that was kind of, Deadpool had the yin and yang, whereas Transport was this consistent high level of production, you know, and slick level of production, and they were two entirely different beasts. And for me, like I say, at this stage where I need to learn, I need to do both sides of studio movies as such. They've kind of been bracketed together as, oh, you're doing these two big things, but they're completely different. You know, Frank Martin and Ajax are extremely different characters in their makeup and in their psychology and in their fighting styles as well, you know.
Obviously, you bring yourself to all of the characters you play. But what's closest to you? What is the role that is closest to you? And what is the film that's closest to you? What is you as a fan of cinema, that this is what you actually sort of clean
that I've done so far?
Yeah.
There's two films. The first film, Ill Manners, was a film that was based on my world and people that I know. It was not based on me. It was based on people that I knew. You know, I played a drug-dealing sociopath, which I'm quite the opposite of, you know, but I knew a lot of drug-dealing sociopaths. And so, we spoke in our local slang and local dialect, you know, and so it was very, you know, it was a visceral window into our world. It was very important that we showed them, you know, the forgotten voices of our world and our generation. And then the next movie is The Model, you know, which is coming out the same week as Deadpool, which is a small Danish film that I did with Lars von Trier's production company, the fashion photographer project. Zentropa, exactly. And that's the first movie that I've just spoken in my accent, you know, because in Ill Manners it was like really slanged out, and it was, you know, kind of made it a lot streeter than I speak in real life. But in the model, it was just like I just spoke exactly how I speak. And I was kind of like, I'm just going to make this Danish style. I want to make this just really naturalistic. Yes, I kind of made sure my posture was really bad. Sometimes my posture is really bad. Yes, I walked with, you know, my feet out and had a swagger that's kind of different from mine slightly, but that was very close to me, you know. And you know, those two films have similarities. They were both shot, you know, they're both hyper-realism, you know. And it was always about like, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. Whereas sometimes when you're doing movies like this, it's like, take it up, and other things that, you know, you're trying to push it, and you're doing these surreal characters that are so far removed from you. And, you know, for me, none are better than the other, and I think it's important that I do step away from these roles that are exactly like me so I can grow as an actor, but it's wonderful to sit back in that role, you know.
Very last question, because we do have to wrap. Dork shelf refers to like a shelf of collectibles, nerdy things that you have in your house. Anything specifically that you collect, or anything that might surprise some of your fans?
Comic books. I collect comic books. I collect graphic novels. That's probably no surprise to my fans because I always talk about it. I'm collecting the Invisibles at the moment by Grant Morrison and reading the Saga series, and I'm crazy about Deadpool. I'm just a bit of a Marvel geek when it comes to toys. I have a son, and so, like, you know, when I saw the Hulkbuster toy, I was just like, it blew my mind, and I think I was more excited than my son. And, like, you know, the plastic figures and stuff like that. You know, Ninja Turtles, like rekindling my love for Ninja Turtles with the Nickelodeon series, which I thought was incredible. You know, and the subsequent movies and stuff. You know, that is something that I'm crazy about. And cartoons, you know, cartoons. I love watching cartoons.
And now you're going to be an action figure yourself.
Yeah, which is like incredible. Which is just incredible.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Cheers, dude.